Communications, where she plays a leading role in developing the strategic direction of all of CS&C and its components consisting of the National Cybersecurity Division, the Office of Emergency Communications, and the National Communication Systems. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Bobby.
Good morning. Does anybody mind if I wander around down here? Because if you, I'll trip up here and fall over and we'll have to have the EMTs come. That all good with that? It might provide some entertainment for your morning that I would really prefer not to be as a part of it. So thank you all for having me here this morning. It is a great pleasure, and thanks for the introduction that's here. I am Bobby Stempfley, although effective last week, I am no longer the acting assistant secretary. I'm now the deputy assistant secretary, which is what I was before. It's just we have a new member of the DHS cybersecurity team, Mr. Mark Weatherford, who, for those of you who are familiar with the energy environment, he came to us from being the CISO at FERC. And so he started here just before Thanksgiving, and that meant that Greg Schaefer came back to being the assistant secretary, and I get to have one job, which is wonderful, at least I think. So I am the deputy assistant secretary for cybersecurity and communications at the Department of Homeland Security, basically responsible for the department cybersecurity portfolio and strategic communications portfolio and for the federal government, and state and local interoperable communications. So it is all things from first responder to ensuring that the president can talk to his peers in an emergency. And an emergency being physical, being cyber, being any other component. And so it really is a phenomenal place to get a perspective on how we're doing and what we're doing, and sort of, you know, what is our balance between the incredible press of urgency of the now and the how do we have to affect things so that maybe we're not having exactly the same conversation today we had a decade ago. I don't know about you guys in the cybersecurity business, but sometimes it feels like that, doesn't it? It feels like we're talking about some of the same things we've been talking about for a long time. And then I sit back and I look at all the progress we've made. Mind you, I'm an optimist by heart, but I try to be a pragmatist and a practical person. We've made a lot of progress. Boy, is there a long way to go. But we made a lot of progress over the last, 10 years or so, or at least as long as I've been sort of mucking around in the cybersecurity business. And so at the Department of Homeland Security, we have this broad set of responsibilities in cybersecurity, right? A broad set of responsibilities. Let's talk about protection of the .com for a moment, right? Something that the department doesn't do alone. As a matter of fact, the one thing I have learned having come to the Department of Homeland Security from the Department of Defense is, boy, it is everybody's responsibility, right? Everything we do in Homeland Security is a shared thing. It's a unity of effort problem. It's an everybody's got to pitch in kind of situation as a part of it. And so if we talk about some of the things we're doing in the .com space, right? 85% of critical infrastructure owned and operated by somebody other than the government, right? It's a pretty sizable number. Really important, because I'll tell you, I like to get my driver's license at 2 in the morning. I don't know about you guys, but that's about the time I figure out I need to get my driver's license. Generally, it's 2 in the morning the day it's supposed to expire, but, you know, I want to get online and I want to get my driver's license. I want to pay my water bill. I want to be able to do these things as a citizen that are so important to me, being able to balance my life and my kids and my job and all of these pieces. And so I need that stuff to be up, right? I demand as a citizen for that thing to be there. I live in the town of Herndon. I want the town of Herndon's website to be able to be there in that moment. And so how do we work together as a federal government, as a state government, as a local government, with companies that are responsible for piecing together capability that makes me be able to get my driver's license at 2 in the morning, which, by the way, you can do unless you have to have a picture taken in the state of Virginia. You can do. I have living proof. But how do we partner in order to do that? It seems like it'd be an easy thing, doesn't it? I mean, it seems like it should be a pretty easy thing. We all have a common goal. The one great thing I love about the cybersecurity business is it's hard for anyone not to have a common goal in this space. Right? So we all have a common goal. Now let's talk about all the ways we have to get there. Right? You'd think sharing information would be really easy. You'd think, right, in this public-private partnership that we have to put in place. And it can be very easy. We've succeeded in the last 5 months or so in breaking through some of the myriad of legislation, policy, regulation, stacks of paper, yay big, with more lawyers than I even knew existed, to be able to share operationally relevant information collected from one private company with other companies through the National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center. Right? It doesn't just happen. You want it to just happen. Everybody wants it to just happen. And it doesn't just happen. You have to find ways to do this because there are some pesky laws out there you don't want to break as you do it, like the Trade Secrets Act and a couple of other important things we don't want to violate, like wiretapping and becoming an agency of the government, and pretty important things that we need to make sure are worked through. And so we now have, I'm very pleased to say, gone live on the 1st of December, the Cybersecurity Information Sharing and Collaboration Portal, where we have indicators being shared with folks who have helped walk through this myriad of capabilities. We have a proven process and I won't call it a contract because it's not a contract in the purest sense of the word, but a legal instrument that protects both government and industry in these situations. And have shared, we piloted this for, 7 or 8 months, shared 800 pieces of indicators with the financial sector, really worked through the kinks of it, and now have opened it up to many, many more partners, including our communications sector friends, our IT sector friends, working with the energy sector and some individual companies to bring them in and be able to put this in place. And so we are in a place where we're 5 days into it at this point, after having piloted it for about 8 months as a part of it. And it's a really great capability that has taken entirely too long, right? I mean, we want to do this. And really has shown that while we all want to do this, we have quite a bit of issues to work through. It's not as simple as folks think it is. But that's a part, just one part of that shared set of responsibilities we have. So that enables us, the government, us DHS, us, all of the government, all of the centers initiated under the CNCI initiative, to bring together the data they have, to share it with industry. It enables industry, as they come in through this mechanism, to provide indicators they have and share that back. It enables us to put them on our floor if we need to. The NCIC floor has participants from the number, range of about 40 companies right now, actually physically there on the floor. That number changes every day, so I can't always keep up with what the latest figures are, which gives us a platform for operations, right? In that urgent press of the now, the things that we need to have handled right this instant. It enables us to bring teams together under the National Cybersecurity Incident Response Plan, where we have a public-private response, a national level plan for how would we handle something so big that it needs all of us, all hands at the table in order to be successful. And we exercise that on a fairly regular basis, having just completed one of the exercises that'll be a part of Cyberstorm 4. We exercise bringing together our private industry partners, our government partners, our international partners, so that we can say, if this were to happen, if this event where every part of us has a small piece of the picture, how would we both come together, build the common picture, make some decisions about what each of us are going to do, and watch what happens as each of us move out within each of our respective authorities and lanes, because it is everybody's got to do in this situation. Cybersecurity is very much an everybody's got to do kind of mission space. In addition to that, we have a fairly substantial program focused on things like control systems. For those of us who come from the IT world, which would be me, the concept of a control system, it took me a minute, right? My son goes, "Hey, Mom, it's the thing out there that makes the cable come." I'm like, well, okay, not quite, but he got it, right? He got it in a practical way, and it tied to something that my 11-year-old boy really cares about, which is the internet has got to come to the house and the television has got to come to the house. I got to get that boy on his bike some more. But control systems, right? We had Stuxnet last year. We had Dooku. We had a series of events that we're watching very closely, because as owners and operators push for the kinds of efficiencies that IT enables, and they're connecting the infrastructures that make physical and cyber come together, right, that move things, that people's lives depend on, with the basic IT infrastructures, that's really opening up the potential for vulnerabilities in ways that the control systems weren't built to recognize, right? It's the concept of revisions in some of these spaces is on the terms of decades, not on the terms of days, right? And so you have to think through a security model that's a little different in that situation. And as the security model of the owners and operators control systems are changing, the consequences are certainly changing, and the vulnerabilities are changing. And so we work very closely with owners and operators around the nation to help them see what these realities today mean. We have a very substantial program and partnered with several of our national labs in order to do this, right? Leveraging the best talent that the nation has in this situation as we go forward. We've got a pilot program that we partnered with the Department of Energy, the Department of Energy, Department of Defense, and many other agencies have come together on how to test some smart grid capabilities, focused very much on how do we ensure that we have mechanisms for some of our Department of Defense partners in grid. The program's called SPIDERS, and for the life of me, I can't remember the acronym, but it'll come to me as we continue our discussion today. And so it's about sharing information, right? It's about providing best practices, collecting those where we find them. So if we have a particular corporation that does something particularly well, how do we take that, make it the thing that make it more widely available? And then it's about being there when something goes wrong, right? Having a plan, exercising that plan, and being able to be there when something goes wrong. And that's sort of a broad set of the responsibilities and capabilities that the department has as we talk about protection of .com. When you move into the .gov space, we are responsible for helping support the departments and agencies in the protection of their networks. So test question, how many federal departments and agencies are there? Did you say 26? 200 something, not quite. Good, that's too high. 26 is too low. So about 109. They're about 109. And it varies. It varies, right? You have the Department of Defense, the Department of State. You have 24 big departments and agencies, right? Really big. Department of Defense, Department of State, Veterans Affairs, Department of Homeland Security, big. And then you have one that's 9 people. Yeah, slightly different IT model between I'm in however many nations the Department of State is in. and I'm 9 people in a single building on the White House compound, right? You don't exactly solve the problems in the same way in those environments. So we have to be successful in that broad range. And so that involves everything from helping departments and agencies look at what they have, right? So those 9 people don't have an IT shop, right? They just don't. And they're not going to have an IT shop. So if I tell them, you have to do these 43 things, these are the necessary 43 things, and actually in the next year it will be 71 things under the Trusted Internet Connection set of responsibilities, which you either have to do yourself as a department or an agency, or you have to procure in some way a set of 71 security things, which range from there has to be somebody there who can pick up the phone and know what we're talking about when we say incident may just have happened on your network. Right? When we started in 2008, there weren't somebody on the other, I mean, they weren't there. Not in every department or agency. And so we would call and say, problem happening, alarm, alarm, alarm. And they'd go, really? Huh? So, one of them is there's got to be somebody you can call on the other end of the phone. 2, you have to have basic antivirus capabilities. 2, you have to know what assets exist in your environment. 2, you have to know where your traffic is coming from, and you have to move it all behind a defined number of pathways so that we can jointly put in place the kinds of security controls that make sense in these environments. 2, identity might be really important. I think we're going to talk about that later today too, right? Knowing who's there and what they're responsible for and what they're allowed to do might be important too. And so 9 people are not going to implement those 71 things the same way that, say, Department of Energy is or Department of Homeland Security is. And so we have to have the kind of flexibility and the kind of resiliency and agility to address the entire range of the federal government. I always find it fascinating when folks say, well, just tell them to do X. And you say, yeah, 9 people, no IT shop. Let's start talking about what we're doing X for, and then we'll come up with the means by which we can put that in place. And so in the .gov space, it ranges from that trusted internet connection architecture. It's an architecture. And it's more than just let's go from more than 1,000 connections across the federal government between the departments and agencies and their internet capabilities. It's more than that. It's that plus let's get some basic configuration management capabilities and asset management capabilities in place. Let's put in place intrusion detection. Let's put in place identity services. Let's do the kinds of basic foundational IT management and security capabilities that are so necessary, that we've been talking about for a really long time, and that folks are making progress on across the board. 2, let's put Einstein capabilities in place. Right, so Einstein 1, Einstein 2, and Einstein 3, which is in development and will go to test this year as a part of it. So let's put basic traffic monitoring in Einstein 1. Let's put intrusion detection in place. Let's move federal traffic behind that intrusion detection capability. Let's put intrusion prevention in place over the course of the next couple of years with the intrusion prevention capabilities. And let's do that across the entire federal government in a way that's both cost-effective in these budget-concerning times, and in a way that is prevention-effective, risk-reducing, in an environment where the budget cycle's much slower than the threat cycles. Right? So we have to have the kind of organizational agility that's necessary for us to do this. And then let's have the plan for how we respond when things go wrong. Right, when crisis occurs in the federal government on a .gov network. Let's work with them, let's partner with them, and let's engage at a variety of levels inside the departments and with their leadership. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So, protection of .gov, protection of .com, and then we have this, let's talk about the future moment. Right? Because both of those just feel the urgent press of the now. And, how many in the room here think that, feel that every day in cybersecurity, right? It's so easy to just feel that urgent press of the now, isn't it? Let's solve these problems. So we have a set of our programs that are focused on trying to have a whole new future, right? Let's envision something a little different. Now, mind you, some of these capabilities are exactly the same, right? We have to have authentication. So important. Just foundational. Very much in the urgent press of the now and in changing the future, right? We have to have the kind of automation that enables the speeds we need, right? Because we need speed. We all need speed in this situation. And we have to have that dreaded I word, right? We have to have the interoperability that enables us to be the kind of heterogeneous environment we are, right? We are, and we will always be in this scenario because, remember, back to the federal government, 9 people, a couple 100,000. Right? So we're going to have this interoperable requirement that's a part of it. And so we have to have not just that, right? We have to have those core pieces. None of that's easy. Absolutely none of that's easy. And our challenge is to make sure we stay focused on that while we're feeling the urgent press of the now, right? I think that's all of our challenges as a part of it. We have to do some pretty basic things, right? We have to architect. We have to architect better. We have to architect it all. In various cases, it's one or the other. We have to push all of us for better quality product. Right? So I'm a computer science graduate, and I'm hoping that as my daughter goes to college in a couple of years, that her experience will be different than mine. When I got my computer science degree, hello world is all they cared about, right? That's all I needed to do was print hello world. It didn't matter how I got it, I had to print hello world, right? Well, we care now. We know we have to care now. And so we have another great partnership where government is engaged with industry, and I'm so excited about some of the outputs of this, where we are paving the road for better curriculum in colleges around how to care about more than just hello world, right? I'm going to produce hello world in a way that's secure, high quality, and doesn't create other issues as we go forward. And so last year we released with many partners a curriculum for master's students that's about raising the bar in the computer science curriculum. We, for the first time, opened the Centers of Academic Excellence with NSA to 2-year colleges. So you can be a junior college or a community college and be a Center of Academic Excellence in Information Assurance. So making available to more students scholarship for service money at the community college level as we work to make college affordable across the board, and ensuring that as they're doing that, they're getting the kind of training that helps them produce higher quality, better product for all of us across the board. Some really great commercial partners in that, EMC, McAfee, and others. Really a phenomenal set of programs that are there. And then I always like to talk about my mother. I love my mother. I love my mother very much. So if she ever gets to see this, you all have to say, I said I love my mother very much. My mother periodically calls the U.S. CERT. This is a great conversation, right? She'll say, I have a virus. I'll call the U.S. CERT. And then she'll call me later and say, you know that Charles guy who answered the phone? He's really good. And then I have to trot down and tell Charles that he had a lovely conversation with my mother, and he goes, oh my gosh. And anyway, it's a pretty funny thing. But we have to raise the bar for everyone, right? We spend a phenomenal amount of time preaching to the choir. I don't know about you guys, right? I spend a lot of time preaching to the choir. I tell cybersecurity professionals about the kinds of things we're doing in cybersecurity. I work to tell a lot of other people about the need for cybersecurity and about the things that are being done in cybersecurity and about the capabilities that are out there for them to take advantage of. I assume everyone in the room here has someone they're trying to talk to that says, I need to do this, and it's going to take this many resources, and here's why it's more important than every other thing that you have on your plate, right? And that's a hard conversation. In my experience, it was always a hard conversation. And so we have to help raise everyone's awareness. And so in 2011, which is winding down, but was a really busy year for all of us, we had the 8th annual National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Great month. I always think it's a great month because it really sets us off for a great year as a part of it. And we're having, through these activities, we have to work with everyone, right? I go talk to 3rd graders. I go talk to Girl Scouts. I go talk to CEOs, right? We have to actually teach people what this thing is, what it means to them. Because my mom, bless her heart, my husband is her IT support, right? He is her IT support. He gave her a T-shirt for Christmas that said, I will drop everything to fix your computer or not, right? It's but my mom, she wants to turn it on. She wants it to work, right? I want to turn it on. I want it to work at 2 in the morning when I want my driver's license as a part of it. But we have to teach everybody what this means to them. And it has to be something that isn't just fear, right? We have a lot of fear-based conversations in cybersecurity. We have to have fact-based conversations and meaningful dialogues. And so we have a number of activities, and for any of you who want to take this into your schools, the National Cybersecurity Alliance and the CSAVE program is a wonderful program to go into schools with and to teach. But the 8th annual Cybersecurity Awareness Month really set the stage for us for this year of rolling out of everything from the international strategy, which was sent out earlier this year, to the what will be coming as the Blueprint for Homeland Security Enterprise, to any number of other initiatives and capabilities that are so important. And where I get to say, stop, think, and connect, right? I get to say that over and over and over again to people, to my kids, to your kids, to my parents, to their friends, because we all have to understand what this means to us. And it can't just be those of us preaching to the choir over and over again. It has to be all of us, because there's only $1.50 out there, and we're all fighting for that same $1.50 in this environment. And we have to be able to push on a few open doors here, which means everybody needs to understand in a better way, in a better shape, in a better form across the board. And so it's that broad set of responsibilities that the federal government has. As I said, it's working with everyone in order to help raise the bar for everyone as we move forward. Not just focused on those people in the government, not just focused on states, state and locals, not just focused on industry, but all of us pulling together are really the only way we're going to be successful in the cybersecurity space at all. And so I really love the broad set of partnerships and the need for that, because it enables such rich dialogue. I'm not sure I've ever been in a conversation where everybody agrees, right? Beyond this is what we're pushing for. And so as we bring more and more people into this dialogue, we're able to get more and more ideas, right? We're able to bring together some of these really niche things and make them more mainstream. We're able to see where what we've done before we can do again. We're able to see where what we've done before maybe isn't working quite the way we had expected, and we need to affect that and change. And I'll say that I have never met, in my entirely too many decades of experience, more dedicated professionals, regardless of where they work, than I have in the cybersecurity business. Right? It is that place where we are all pushing for that same vision, and we're all working towards making the conversation we have next year, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now be a different one than what we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I am so glad to have this room of people and all of the rooms of people that you represent working together towards that goal as a part of it. I have a few minutes to take some questions if anybody has them while we get moving on the next part of the day. Yes? Do you mind just telling me what your name is, too? Hi, nice to meet you, Stan. So I'm going to restate the question so everybody can hear it, and you get to nod if I got it right. Okay? I'll paraphrase a little bit. So I think the question was, legislation has been tried and is pending in a variety of forms over a variety of Congresses, and what's our feel about today and the future relative to legislation? So there's a little bit of congressional tea reading you're asking for here, which I find really fascinating. Okay, and then secondarily, while the folks on the Hill figure out what they're going to do, what are we doing in the interim period? Did I get that about right? Okay, so you're right. Congressional tea reading, not my job. I don't mean to be so flippant about it, but there are any number of proposals, and there have been repeatedly more and more proposals as we go over the last several years, which as the other anecdote I use is my now college freshman was a high school senior last year and taking AP Government, and I tell her that my job every day is an object lesson in what she's learning in AP Government. And one of the things she learned in AP Government is it takes a momentum, right? Congress rarely takes on something in one term and solves it in one term. They build a momentum of knowledge and understanding as they go along, and that's what they're doing in this scenario. This Congress, however, we had the administration's proposal submitted as a part of it, so that informs the dialogue that the Hill is having. It's not just what each of the committees have come forward with or are coming forward with, but it is informed by a formal presentation of a proposal from this administration onto the Hill. And they're spending a lot of time learning. We've had conversations with, that started with members not really understanding what the computer does, now getting something about what this issue means to them in these ways. And so we spent a long time learning. I can't possibly, I have no crystal ball when it comes to the Hill as a part of it. But I do see them having the dialogue and having the debate, and we saw a lot of things starting before without the same kind of debate and dialogue, and so what'll come out of it, I don't know. Any number of proposals from a variety of things. The Republican task force released its report a couple of months ago, and there's a bill last week introduced, and so we're running. They have a lot of work on their plate, so we'll see how this prioritizes. But it is something that we are actively engaged with the Hill on to try to help inform their debate as they go forward. And there are some things we need legislation for. Right? I mean, there just are some things that we need legislation for, but we don't need legislation for everything. And so the things that we can do with that legislation, we are doing. So we are actively working on the intrusion detection capability being put in place, working through MOUs and other mechanisms, a relationship between the department and the Department of Homeland Security and the other departments while we wait for the legislative solution for some of these things as a part of it. It'll be really an interesting thing to see what the Hill comes back with. They have a phenomenal amount of content to go through, right, with each of the committees working themselves forward, and so it is thankfully something that they are focused on. So we'll see. Again, though, they're running out of time in this Congress, so we'll see what happens. Appreciate it. Other questions? Really? Because I can go on forever on all kinds of things. Go ahead. I'm sorry, you are?
I'm Steve Antone with You mentioned intrusion prevention and what type of
So Einstein 3 is more than just an architecture. Einstein 3 is actually a capability that will go into operational tests later this year. And it involves, let's see, the question was technologies behind Einstein 3, or is it just an architecture? And so it is a combination of several pieces, right? When we say intrusion prevention, it's not we're going out and buying an intrusion prevention thing and sticking it in there, because we are talking about the federal government. And so we're not talking about a bunch of lands or even a metropolitan area network. We're talking about NASA and volumes of traffic relative to NASA, and we're talking about state, and we're talking about Social Security Administration. We're talking about a fairly sizable kind of infrastructure. Einstein 3 has in addition to being a different technology base than Einstein 2, also has a different architectural foundation. It is being employed not at the defined borders between departments and agencies, so on the sort of the side of the department, in terms of the ISP department relationship, we're working with the ISPs to aggregate federal traffic in the cloud, in the ISP's infrastructure, to put, in effect, fewer pieces of technology, fewer racks in place across the government to be able to do this in a more cost-effective manner across the board. And as I said, it'll go to operational tests later this year, so it is actually a live, breathing, touch, blinking light kind of thing. Good question, thank you. Others? There's more coffee.
Hi, Bobby, I'm Mark with GCRA. As you mentioned earlier, you made a comment about the fact that you preached to the choir.
Yeah, oh, great question. Did everybody hear that? You can project really well. Do everybody hear that? Okay, so actually that is a really good question, and isn't that, I think that's everybody's challenge. Prior to coming to the department, I was a CIO at a major defense agency, and so had just that problem as a part of it. And one of the ways that we're working at DHS, and things that had worked for me previously, and I'm sure you all already know, so forgive me if I'm getting too basic, right, those coalitions are so important, right, they are. Get the people with the money, right, get the CFOs on board, get the people who the people who the business office has to listen to, your auditors, right, the IG folks, involve them in your coalition. They can be huge advocates for you. And are, in my experience, worth the complicated conversation that you have to have with them. Engage early, right? Early with the business folks. Figure out where your time is best invested in that situation, because something that's about to roll out you may not have as much influence as something that is, early or mid in development cycle. So I mean, these are pretty basic IT management kinds of things. But don't expect them to learn your language. It's not going to happen. In my experience, it doesn't happen in the way that you want it to. Learn their language. It's really up to you to learn their language as a part of it. And we're all in this together, right? So let's bring awareness up across the board. Let's engage and help to educate the leadership. So within the policymaking process in the government, we've put cybersecurity, the administration regularly has put cybersecurity on the priority, which means it's a part of what the deputies talk about. Right, so we're basically at the deputy CEO level in departments and agencies talking about this thing called cybersecurity. So we're trying to help change the dialogue at that senior level inside the government, which over time will help change the dialogue at lower levels. But those coalitions are so important as a part of it. And the other thing that had worked for me in the past is friends are interesting, enemies are more useful, right? You find the person that is the hardest to turn, and when you've got them turned, they're on your side. And so sometimes those folks can be incredibly powerful for you in those scenarios, in those situations. But it is about picking a couple of things and staying on message again and again and again and again and again and again and again as we go forward. And one of the things that we have historically suffered from was having too many things on the plate. Right? When we have been working with departments and agencies to say, well, you have to do everything, right? You got to do all 71 things, and you've got to do this. And it's what are the 4 or 5 things you need to focus on? Where do you start? Because if you're just stepping into this space, I've been in it for a long time, and so I mean, it all makes sense in my head a little bit. But if you're just stepping into this space, where do you start? It's everything, right? Everything from user training to behaviors to edge device configurations to mobility, to infrastructure and enterprise security to it's everything. So where do you start? Pick a couple, build a coalition, use the urgency of the now to your advantage in that situation. Great question. So, great question, actually, and very personal one to me, too, because my son wants his first cell phone. So, we're about to add another cell phone to the bill. So, mobility is a challenge even at the basic sense. What does that word mean to everyone? At sort of a foundational level, it means something different to everyone. So we are beginning with, begin at the beginning with the fundamentals. What does it mean? What problems are we trying to solve? And so as we work through a set of security architectures for the federal government in partnership with the Federal CIO Council and with the ISIMC committee, so the Information Security and Information Management Committee, we in the National Cybersecurity Division are working to build a series of architectures over the course of the next year that will help address some key areas in mobility, such as telework, such as connection of mobile devices into the broader infrastructure, and how it aligns with some of the cloud-first thinking that goes forward. And so those architectures will help are built by committee in large cases. So they're built by those departments and agencies who have moved out in this space and have content to contribute that now lay out a cookbook for other folks to follow as they're putting these in place. We have a series of mobility threat and vulnerability analyses going on in different pockets of the organization. Again, some of those our own and some working with other partners. And then finally, as we talk about some really important things, mobility means something to us in terms of the enterprise, but in that portfolio of responsibilities that we have in the Office of Cybersecurity and Communications, one of the things we care about are first responders. And mobility means something very different to them. And so as the whole landscape of wireless capabilities changes now and into the future, we are looking very closely at what that means in that interoperable communication at the first responder level as well. So really a broad swath of actions as we go forward here. Great question. Thank you, Wyatt. I got the 15-minute sign, so we got lots of time for more questions. Yeah.
Hi, Tony Stevens from the FAA. Can you describe the relationship between the requirements that we get from NIST now that we have to comply with and what's coming from Homeland and how that will be coordinated? I think we'd like to see kind of one requirement set that's authored by both. Is that something that
So so let me restate so everybody can hear. The question was, what's the relationship between the requirements coming from NIST and those that might come from the Department of Homeland Security as a part of it, and a desire to see those coordinated. And so actually it's a really good observation, and we aren't where we need to be, but we are on a path to make that cleaner. So NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, publishes standards on all kinds of things. And what we do in the department is both participate with NIST as they're publishing a standard. It's the subject matter expert in certain cases. And then as we issue guidance, as I said, like the Trusted Internet Connection architecture, we then refer back to those standards where they exist as a part of it. So it enables us to identify which of the NIST standards are applicable to the requirements that are necessary, identify gaps between the two, and then to fill those gaps where we are working with interim capability, interim guidance while we work through the standards processes as we go forward. It's not perfect yet. We still have a bit of out of phase in the situation, and so we're working to establish some more common prioritization mechanisms between the two departments so that we can help line that up better. Nice question, thank you. Others? Yes, ma'am. Next gen being which next gen? Everybody's got a next gen, so do you mind?
Modernization of the national airspace.
Thank you.
5 agencies trying to work together and share.
Perfect. Everybody's got a program titled Next Gen, so I just needed to figure out which one this was.
What's your experience with getting the other agencies to buy into what you're doing with Einstein, and what's your mechanism for making that?
Remember I went back to the beginning and I said it's a shared responsibility. Everybody has to be a part of it. I don't have a stick. Right, I'm the Department of Homeland Security. I don't have a stick, and so our experience in terms of Einstein and in terms of the Trusted Internet Connection programs and these programs we've been working over the last several years is everybody's shooting towards the same vision, and so in general, folks are wanting to get there. Is the pace everything we all want it to be? Absolutely not. And that ranges from, some departments just don't have the resources, and the prioritization scheme inside the department is different, and how we engage. When we talk about Einstein 1, we've got it deployed across the entire government. Einstein 2, I have operational at all but 2 of the departments that it's targeted for that we're deploying to. And then the other departments and agencies that come in under the networks vehicle, as they're buying services, as they're moving on to networks, they're getting it as a part of that, and we haven't had any real concern. And we're down to 2 departments that we've got to work with legislation. I mean, so really it's been painful. The soft stuff is the hard stuff, as Admiral Brown always says. It has not been, it hasn't just been a cakewalk, but it has been a situation where we've all agreed on the vision. And so we've had a common place to start in that scenario. And then it's an awful lot of working through the eaches. And the eaches are very different in each department. And so the conversation we have with the Social Security Administration is a different conversation than the one that we have with the Department of Energy or with Veterans Affairs. Is a different conversation about intrusion detection, intrusion prevention than we have with Health and Human Services as a part of it. So thank you, I appreciate it. Other questions? Yes, sir.
I don't know if we spoke on continuous monitoring and the marriage of requirements or ideas, let's say OMB, NIST, DHS, in terms of guidance and standards.
So the question was about continuous monitoring. And if I paraphrase, let's see if I get it right, where are we in terms of bringing together the set of standards between the folks who've implemented something, NIST, DHS, and others, so that we have standards for the rest of the departments and agencies to follow. Did I get it about right? Okay. So actually, I'm a huge advocate of continuous monitoring. Having, as I said, been a CIO and having to, go through the sort of process of saying what is a system and what isn't a system, and feeling like that wasn't getting me very far in certain situations. The concept of understanding the configurations that I have in place and knowing when somebody puts something out there that maybe I didn't know about before is a really great concept. And so we rolled out for FY12 continuous monitoring as the foundation for FSMA reporting. Big change in how this is going to work as we go forward. And so as a part of that, we've had a series of reference architecture dialogues between NIST, between departments that have put it in place already, and basic, can't do everything overnight kinds of conversations with OMB, which is always a part of the dialogue. And beginning to focus on some really fundamental things, right? Assets. Where are they? Who are they? What are they? Right? So we really picked a very small handful of things to focus on over FY12. That guidance is out. If you don't have it, I'll make sure, we'll follow up and make sure folks have it. DHS.gov/cyber is a great place to start for a lot of those things. There's a continuous monitoring tab under there that will help lead you to the specifics that are a part of it. We've taken that reference architecture and we're working with GSA as well in order to put in place a BPA that enables folks to get tools and capabilities if they need it, recognizing that this isn't something that's it's just not going to appear overnight, right? Those 9 folks, it might happen a lot faster than it does for the couple of 100,000 people in a different place. And so working with the departments to put in place their plans for how long it will take them and what we would anticipate seeing through the monthly FSMA reporting now as things go. And then finally, the normal conversation we have that says, well, you think you have 10 of whatever it is, and then when we put continuous monitoring in place, you discover you have 27. Right? So really starting to educate not just OMB, but the IG community and the Hill into, what does this really mean in terms of the metrics that are a part of it, because it's going to show us what we all know anecdotally, that the numbers are not what we think. It might actually show us that the numbers are something different, and that different takes us a while to sort of process and understand and work through. And so we've got a engagement with the committee of IGs. So there's a federal CIO council. There's also a federal IG council. So we have an engagement with the committee of IGs to help them understand what this means, because it has to change some of what they're looking at as well in a way that is supportive of all of us moving forward. So thanks. It's a big push for us in 12 and certainly a big push for us in 13 as well. Other questions? Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
How do you see Einstein as well as continuous monitoring being effective and implement as the administration pushes towards cloud computing?
Okay, so the question was, how do I see Einstein and continuous monitoring being successful in effect as the administration pushes towards cloud computing? So actually, great question, but not as complicated as I thought. I really thought that was going to be really, 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 really hard. It's not going to be easy, but it's not as complicated as I thought. So cloud computing is a great option that departments and agencies are moving towards, and the administration has a cloud-first policy, particularly as folks are doing data center consolidation. And so as we are working with the FedRAMP program office today, actually literally today in the dialogue, defining the 9, it'll start with 9 controls in the NIST controls that are the cloud provider's responsibility in cloud computing that are directly related to continuous monitoring, defining the automation standards for those, and putting that in place. So that solves part of the problem, right? How do we help the cloud providers know what needs to be automated? Then how do we ensure that in the back-end infrastructure of continuous monitoring, we can have visibility of those, that the department or agency leadership can have visibility of those, because just because you've moved your data to a cloud doesn't mean you lose accountability for the configuration or the protection of that data. So you need to know what the department, what the cloud provider is doing in that situation. And then we want visibility of that as well. Someone in the government needs visibility of that as well to be able to measure how well the cloud providers are doing across the board in meeting the security controls that are required for them to be a provider and that the third-party auditor has to comply with. And so they're not really opposing concepts, at least in the continuous monitoring sense. What they are a more clear definition of who's responsible and who is accountable, and more visibility of that data in more than one place, because that's really the piece that's going to be a bit more complicated. In the cloud environment, cloud providers actually are going to be responsible for, I think it's 134 control of the total set of NIST controls. I think it's 134 of those 9 are associated with continuous monitoring and automatable in the first pass. And so they're actually working through that today with GSA and NIST and DHS and others. On Einstein 2, again, Einstein 3, the beauty of putting the federal traffic, of putting Einstein 3 into the infrastructure itself is that I can identify the traffic that's going to the cloud provider. Right, so as I have to identify federal traffic, I can identify that traffic as well and put in place. And there are some not easy, so remember I said it's not as complicated as I thought, but it's not easy. There are some not easy network architecture issues that have to be worked through in order to be successful in that scenario. We're in the process of working through that as well. And as specific public cloud providers in the through the FedRAMP program are identified, that will help us to be more clear there. The proof will be in the pudding. Right? I mean, I may say all this in terms of architecture work and planning work, and the proof will be in the pudding as we work through actual implementation of this over the course of the next year. Great.
Great.
All
right,
I
I
think
think
for one more. No. More?
If it's a very short one.
Okay.
We have time. Anyone else have a final question? Oh, someone over there? Yes.
That would be Stephen Van Rokel, the federal CIO, he and David, what is his name? McClure, thank you. David McClure in GSA, who runs Innovative Citizen Services. Both are very actively involved in that scenario, and I'm more than happy to connect you with them. Okay. Thank you all. I really enjoyed the dialogue this morning. Thank you for participating. I find that to be really helpful.
Thank you, Bobby. And that concludes this morning's session. The boardroom meeting started in 15 minutes. The coffee and soda and whatnot is upstairs. And you need to go all the way up the flight of stairs for the boardrooms and enjoy.